Welcome to the Power of Music podcast, brought to you by JM International. Get ready to explore conversations with those making a difference through music.
Hello, and welcome everyone to the Power of Music podcast, provided to you by JMI, Jeunesse Musicale International, a global network of NGOs that empowers young people through music across all boundaries. Today, we are recording from Harare, Zimbabwe, where the JMI Global Conference is hosted. My name is Ricardo, and I'll be your host. And for this episode, I'm joined by Tammy Mbendera. Tammy is an artist from Malawi and the founder of the Festival Institute, which promotes skills enhancement and job creation in the arts in Africa. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Can you please share a little bit about your journey into music?
Okay, my journey into music is a long one. I am a musician myself. I'm a lyricist, so that's something I was just born with. My family were quite musical. So my mom was a radio broadcaster herself for the national radio in Malawi. And my father was also quite an artistic person. He was more of a writer. So we grew up very much around music and around art. It was always quite a central part of our lives. Myself, I ventured into writing. My first thing was writing poetry. Because I couldn't express myself. I remember in when I was in primary school, my first in reception, I remember my parents got called into our school to say, your daughter just never talks at all. We'll ask her questions and she just doesn't respond even. Have you tried getting her to write? And my parents, started encouraging me. My teacher, Mrs. Grimes, bless her, she's the one who got me to express myself through words and through writing. So I've always had that in me. Growing up, I moved at some point when I was 15. I moved to the UK, and my best friend, I made a new best friend there, and he was a rapper. And so he was looking for someone to write a verse for him for a demo tape. Which got him signed, by the way, by a manager who had turned down Amy Winehouse's demo tape.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy. So I he said to me, could you help me write this rap song? I said, I'm not a musician. And he said, no, but you write poems. You could just do that and write it onto a beat. So I did that. I wrote my first song ever with him. It was great. His mom was a diplomat. She was a Malawian diplomat in London. And so she got us to go to the Malawian embassy to perform. That was hilarious because I had to rap my poems to a very confused audience of Malawian diplomats.
Well, but there's not a lot of people that can say that their first ever performance was in front of a bunch of diplomats.
Yeah. That was very embarrassing. It was. So began my musical journey. I'd been writing since. I used to record stuff, but I never released anything really. When I came back to Malawi, I had at that point qualified as a chef, but I'd heard about Lake of Stars Festival in Malawi. I hadn't ever attended it because it started whilst I was living in the UK. So while I was working as a chef, I used to freelance write for a magazine from my friend. And there was an event, a musical event somewhere, and he asked me to go cover it. So while I was covering, I was talking to the manager of the event, and he was introducing me to various artists that were there from across the continent. And so I kind of spent the whole evening writing down, asking them interview questions and writing them down in the artist green room. The director for Lake of Stars happened to be at that show. So he saw me talking to artists and writing things down and assumed I was organizing the event. So in his drunken state, he called me and said, look, you're doing a good job. I was like, thank you. And how would you like to work for Lake of Stars? I was like, well, yes, I would like to do that very much. So that's how I got into festivals. like not long after that, whilst I was working for Lake of Stars, I found out in hindsight that he just assumed I was an organizer. It was too late. I'd signed the contract by then. And then while I was working for Lake of Stars that year, I had to go to a radio station, Capital Radio, to go drop off an advert for the festival. And so I'm talking to the station manager, I'm handing him over the advert, and he said to me, "You have a nice voice. Would you like to work for radio?" I said, "Well, yes." He said, "Okay, call me when you're done with the festival." So, yeah, and that's how I got into radio. I was, I think, 19, 20 at the time. And yeah, I worked in radio for a few years. I would always, take time off during Lake of Stars and go and do that. I was the first ever paid Malawian staff member for Lake of Stars, which is quite great. I did that for 6 years. I got a job in corporate. I did a little bit of corporate, but I think my heart was always in festivals. I'd always take my annual holiday during festival time. And so, yeah, I then, I think it was 2019, I got a call from 2016, I got a call from a musician friend of mine who I'd known through Lake of Stars, and he'd seen an advert for MTN Bushfire Festival. At the time, he called me and said, "Oh, there's this, job vacancy for a festival coordinator at MTN Bushfire, the biggest festival in Africa. And you should apply. I think you'd be really good at it." Like, I don't know. I'm not qualified for it or anything, but I still applied. They interviewed me online. They loved me. I loved them. I got the job. So I moved to Swaziland. Before I moved to Swaziland, that very same year, I was managing a couple of artists in Malawi. A friend of mine, one of the artists, came up to me, and he was going through a time at the time. I think it was a breakup. And he was like, "Yeah, so I wrote this verse," and he sang this verse to me, and I loved it. So the artist in me came out again. "I like that. Can I write a verse to that?" And he's like, "Sure." So happened to be at the studio already. I wrote in like sort of 5 minutes, wrote this verse, went and recorded it. There's an artist in Malawi called Gwamba who also happened to be at the studio at the time. He heard the verse and was like, "Whoa, this is amazing. I'm going to jump on this." Right? So he put on a couple of verses, ended up, because I never released my music in any case, but because he was on it, he ended up releasing the song. It's like Malawi's biggest hip hop artist. And he released the song. It became a hit overnight. And so, but then I got the job at Bushfire. So it's like, no, we did the video and everything. And I left and went to Swaziland. There was still times where I'd meet a few people in Swaziland who were like, "Are you an artist? I've seen you on TV." And no, that's not me. So I coordinated MTN Bushfire for about 6 years as well. Then I kind of started feeling, without being too heavy on the word, I started feeling exploited. But I think that's a normal thing when you are an employee of someone else. I always knew I needed to do more for myself. And so, yeah, it became difficult in sort of the final year for me to sustain, to grit my teeth through it. So, yeah, and fortunately, that was also the year that COVID hit. And so we had to cancel the festival anyway, which is a good time for me to leave. But whilst I worked for the festival, I kind of saw, as I'm saying, my journey into this sort of arts and cultural space was very much an organic and default one. I went really, education-wise, went as far as high school, and all these other jobs, great jobs that I'd gotten, was just really but tenacity.
I think organic is an understatement. I've never heard a story like this.
There are wilder details to this, but I'll give you only the relevant ones right now. Anyway, yeah, so I kind of started seeing, okay, when I worked in corporate, I worked with Ernst & Young, which is one of the big four audit firms, and I would say number one personally in the world. And their hiring policies were quite interesting. So they would also, usually they had an internship program. They could take people straight out of high school and train them as interns and then work their way up to associates. And And so all the other big four audit firms also started adopting this policy. And what they found is that the teams that you train from the ground up are usually much more conversant with, company policies and companies' ways of working. They make for better employees. So I started thinking when I worked with MTN Bushfire particularly, because there's that turnaround of staff as well. We'd hire over 1,600 staff members to run the festival, but they were always temps, right? They'll come in, work for a week, fall in love with this job, do amazing things. Some of them would shine so much, and then you just never see them again. And there's no continuity to that. So I started thinking of the relationship between, how the big corporates work and how we really should start adjusting our systems and ways of thinking to bring that into the forefront. So that then I started thinking of, starting an academy around it, because I was like, this is also a very good training ground. Even if you're gonna build an accountant, right? What better place to do it than throw them in the festival for 3 days to process 30,000 tickets? Of course, they're gonna be great, So yeah, I started looking at the core skills that are found within a festival. With Bushfire, there were 42 different departments. Right, that's 42 different skill sets that you could develop a copyright lawyer out of that. You could develop an accountant, a communications officer, all these different things, hospitality, risk managers, crazy, range of talent that you can find in that kind of setting, for very much almost free, right? Because them like me are just trying to score a free ticket to be at the show and can't afford it. So yeah, I then sort of came up with this idea for the Festival Institute, which is the organization that I run at the moment. So we've been trying to develop the curriculum, develop different programs around it. So far, I've only managed to do a sort of basic 3-month program for project managers. But the great thing about it is when I left Bushfire, because it was such a crazy time, I left very quickly. The borders were closing, and I was like, I'm not trying to die in a foreign land. Bye. So there was no handover. So the agreement with them was that I was going to write a handbook for the next coordinator who was going to come up, who I had no idea who that person was. So it really is sort of a layman's handbook for how to manage the biggest festival in Africa. As I was doing that, I was like, wait, this is the curriculum, So I asked them for permission if I could take the basics of what I was writing and use them as a base for our curriculum. They said yes. And so that's the one I've been using at the moment. It is a shorter version, the program we're running right now, Project Management Essentials for Creatives in Industry is what I'm calling it. I would like to publish that manual very soon. But we've done 2 pilot programs with Music Crossroads Malawi. We trained in total 30 students. Great. One of them is actually here at the conference with me. She came through Music Crossroads, but yeah, she's Angela. She's my Angela. It's been quite a great journey. This year, just this week, we've launched the same program in Cameroon. There's interest in South Africa as well. So yeah, we're definitely looking to grow it. Ultimately, I'd like to build like a Juilliard in Africa.
Nice.
and use these programs that we're developing and so on to make, thorough training, particularly for people like me behind the scenes, secret artists who I want to be there, but I don't really want to be on the stage, So yeah,
the type of people that I don't want to be on the stage, but if they happen to be at the studio at the right time, write a verse, all of a sudden they might get a hit. That kind of people.
Yes, yeah. Those kinds of people.
I know a lot of these.
Oh, really?
No.
I think you're one of them. I can tell. Yeah.
I want to hear a lot more about this project, but I have one other question, because I think some people that are listening might hear this story and be like, this is the luckiest person ever. Like, she's always at the right place at the right time. And I personally don't really believe in that. I also hear a story of somebody who was at some point in life, I don't know for what reason, not talkative at all in class. And I get a different vibe now. Yeah. And I think it has to do mostly with probably, you can answer that, of course, with mindset. how is it that you are always at the right place? Because for people listening, I think it's relevant.
Right. It's been a survival instinct for me, very largely. And maybe to go a little bit deep is that I lost my parents when I was 14, 13. I was 14. My little sister was 12 going on 13 at the time. This was sort of way back Africa where there was not really children's rights and all of those things going for us. So our family, my mother's family, my father's family came in and took my parents' property and so on and all the money. And it's like, you need to go to the village and live there. There was certainly a little bit of resentment prior to that, in that we grew up like, as you can hear from how I speak, we grew up in quite a privileged home. We went to very expensive schools and so on. And so to the sort of the other relatives and so on, we were always called the white people. So there was a little bit of sort of a vengeful thing when my parents died. There was a little bit of a spiteful thing. It was like, we're gonna show them life. And so I think for me, I probably could have taken that and just been like, accepted my fate. But I had my little sister, and I was like, no, I can't allow for this to happen. And so, yeah, how deep do you want to go into the story? Because I made my way to the UK, just like got up one day, managed to find some sponsorship and left the country. I put my sister back into high school, into boarding school, and I got on a plane and left for the UK. So I think it's always been that. It's always, I tend to say that quite a bit. As I was joking about this with a friend of mine as well, who also grew up in a bit of a struggle, and is now a very, very esteemed journalist. And we were like, I think it's because we grew up ghetto, and we don't really see the doors in front of you. You just kind of break through the door and end up at the big table. It's like, oh, there was a door. My bad. Well, I'm here now. And so that's kind of how I've always felt. It's just like, no, go for it. Keep, when I became a chef in the UK, I started off as a pot washer. That was my first job. And I'd always, pick up extra shifts every time there was an extra shift. I'd volunteer in the kitchen, and then the boss fell in love with me and helped me, started teaching me how to cook, and that's how I became a chef. And so that's always really been my life. It's just like, oh, okay, I'm here now. I'm at the table. What's it gonna be?
And then before you know it, you run the table.
Exactly. But I think also that's what inspired me to build the Festival Institute, because again, a lot of sort of these temp staffs that you hire in, for example, when I worked at the Bushfire in Eswatini, a lot of the most outstanding staff members that I got to identify were people like that, who were just like, look, I'm just trying to eat for the week, bro. That's why I'm here. And there was just a panel earlier today at this conference where there was a guy who was talking about how the education system is set up against you that way. It is almost sort of this neo-colonialism kind of setup where if you can't afford to go through the tertiary program, then you can't get a good job. Your future's already planned out for you that way. And I think that's why I built, is the main motivation behind, why I do this, is like, yeah, no, you gotta open doors for some of these people, man. There's great people out there if you just gave them the chance, you know what I mean? Even kind of my ending up in corporate, I walked into that interview and said, look, Ernst & Young, I do not have any qualifications to be your human resource manager or whatever it is I'm applying for right now. But I didn't know how to be a chef, and they showed me how to do it, and I did it really well, In fact, when I was leaving to come back from the UK, but the head of it was, I was working as a chef on Nottingham University campus, and the head of recruitment for Nottingham University came to see me personally and said, "Look, if you ever come back to the UK, your job is open for you." So that's the attitude I went in with when I went to Ernst & Young. I was like, "Listen, just show me how to do it. I bet I'll be the best at it, And by the time I was leaving them too, they were like, but we were going to promote you like next week. And then, you know what? No, No, I'm an artist now. Yeah.
I've hit records. Hey, wow,
Yeah.
inspirational. That's nice. What do you see is the biggest challenges right now in the music industry here?
Ooh, music industry, how do you mean, like as a whole, globally, or in the context where I am?
In the context where you are.
Okay. I think there's a long way to go, many rivers to cross, as they say. I think there's talent out there, but not enough opportunity for the talent on one side. And then there's opportunity for the ones that can bribe their way onto radio, that can, it just depends on how much money's in your pocket is what determines whether you're a star or not. And I think that's a very unfair thing on there is really good talent out there. What it has done as well for the Malawian music industry is then we've started almost losing our sound. I don't know if I should say this on a podcast, but I'm definitely curious to see if I can do a film about that, right? About what is the sound of Malawian sound, because that's a genuine question that a lot of people have. We just conducted a research project about a year ago, funded by Ray Foundation Limited and Malawi National Commission for UNESCO. We were fortunate to have been given that opportunity because there were so many insights that then, as we run the Festival Institute, kind of informed the programs that we developed. But the question that kept coming up, particularly with the artists themselves, were, well, what is the Malawian sound? So we're definitely losing that. We just came out of a Mbira workshop here, and I can't tell you right now what a traditional Malawian instrument is, you know what I mean? And so we lose our music, we'll lose our culture, we'll lose ourselves. And I think we need to restore that. And to restore that, we need to empower the talent and make them believe in themselves again and be confident of their identity and stand with that. Yeah. I also think the game is rigged. Corporate-wise, some findings in our research also identified that we don't have distribution platforms, proper ones where artists can monetize. Oh, we don't have, distribution platforms where artists can really monetize their music and things like that. So of the entire value chain, what we found is because people still consume music on their phone, the majority of everybody who responded as a consumer said they used primarily their mobile phone to consume music. So the artist has to put their music on these local distribution platforms for free, though, and the distribution platforms refuse to respond so obviously they know something that we don't. And the mobile service providers also refuse to respond because obviously you need data to upload the music. You need data to download the music. So they're making money, but you as an artist are not, and so, it's that needs to be fixed. The aim of that research project was to then take our findings to policymakers and industry gatekeepers. At the moment, it's still in edit mode by our funders for the research. But once that is out, that is definitely a thing. First on our agenda is, hello, mobile companies. We want our money. We have a long way to go. But I'm glad that there's a few people who are vested in trying to make the difference. Yeah,
that's good. That's a start.
Just the start, again, many rivers to cross, right?
But it starts with somebody that cares.
Yeah.
To come back to the first point you made, and maybe it's an obvious question, but people that are listening and myself come from a different context. Why do you think is that the fact of reality that the Malawian culture is lost?
I think it's the pressure. Again, like I said, it's sort of if you becoming a global citizen, right, as we all are with the birth of the internet and so on, has definitely made it, has opened up the doors for other forms of music, like amapiano, like hip hop and so on. It looks glamorous on TV, right? So obviously everybody's trying to be relevant and be as glamorous as the people you see on TV. So it's the content that we're fed. I think there's definitely something about colonized Malawi and just post-colonial Malawi, where everything that is Western seems to be progressive, looks progressive to us, So it's like we want to, and if you don't, like I said, for us growing up, it's like you the white people, and it's like, why is that the standard? You know what I mean? And it's unfortunate. It is very deeply in our culture, though, that anything that's not from here is from home is of more value, right? And so you find everybody kind of being pressurized to go in that direction. It is an unfortunate development. We were talking about this even yesterday with a random person that I met here, that it's different, maybe colonized India, post-colonized India, the Indians still kept certain things about their culture that, they still retain till now, their food, you know what I mean? And that's sort of how they've also, even when they go to other countries, they have this sort of financial independence off of the existing systems that are put in place for them. And so I think we need to start rethinking our way of life, our what we consider to be of value. We need to start visiting our roots again, that's an important part of it. And I think, it's not completely lost. It's not completely lost. If you go to rural Malawi, we are based in a creative center that is in rural Malawi. So we have access to people at the very grassroots. The kids are still playing those games that we used to play back in the day that, it's not football, it's, traditional games and traditional stories, riddles. And so Malawi is still there. It's just not in the city as much. If it
rediscovered.
Yeah, we do. It's important. And I think as artists, isn't it our role to kind of, be advocates to stand for something?
Yeah.
And so, it's a very important part of preserving a culture is art, right? And so I think if we do kind of build that talent and harness it, then they will be the keepers of the preservers of who we are.
Yeah, it's such a destructive force. I always get really sad, even if you talk about the context in India, about this story of I read that the Kama Sutra is actually like quite a substantial book with many chapters about how men and women should live together. One of them is sexual, the other ones are very different, which was taken by a British explorer back to the UK, printed as a sexual thing because that was, that was Oriental and exotic. Now to the point that most Indians think that the Kama Sutra is just that.
Oh, wow.
It's a destructive force. And then on the other hand, I said it in the previous episode, so I don't want to repeat myself, but I'm still going to say it again yesterday at the ethno performance. It's these kind of performances of world music and especially a lot of African music. I cried a bit. I smiled. People were dancing.
Yeah.
It's like, it's so rich.
Yeah. Credit to JMI and some of their programs. Ethno is we do a festival with the Music Crossroads Malawi, Akonde Ethno Music Festival, and it tags off of the Ethno Week. So the majority of the program is performed by these students. So programs like that are just beautiful. The art that comes out of that is spectacular, and also we're not really having to pay so much for it because you're here anyway. You were training here. Just consider this your practicals. But fantastic art that comes out of there, and it's very important that there are people out there again who care, who create these programs and these spaces for our art. They've made indigenous music cool again, and what? Crazy. I enjoyed last night as well. That was fantastic.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Like I was very tired and I was contemplating not coming, but I'm really glad I did because it's so energizing.
Yeah.
It's incredible. What is your vision? You kind of touched upon it already for your current projects. Like what do you hope? Like in 5 years, where do we stand?
5 years, where do we stand? 5 years will be still just the start of it. Like I said, we design these programs. I would definitely like to have a university in Gingy where we are. That kind of brings in even people from far and wide, to come and gain their education degrees from there and develop the next generation of Dave Chappelle's and all these wonderful artists that have come out from institutions like that in other countries. That's not a thing that I see myself achieving in 5 years, obviously, but every year is a step. In 5 years, I think at least the programs should be there. In 10 years, I think I would like for us to at least have our first intake for the university. I don't see myself living to see the fruits, the full picture myself, but I definitely will fight to plant these seeds. And maybe my sister's grandchildren can show up one day and build a statue for me in that space. But yeah, I say this all the time. Like, this for me is very much a legacy thing. And thing about legacies is you don't live your legacy, you leave it, right? And I know that this is just the start of something huge. What I see it doing for arts in general, I definitely, you build your academy there, then you have to have your studio. Then you have to have a TV production studio and the TV station and the radio station, and so all of this sort of creative ecosystem can be built in a space like that. We're so fortunate and blessed to have partners in the owners of the Creative Center, who they have accommodation there, like lodging rooms. There's been a few ethno programs that were housed there actually, and Move as well. They've given us free reign of that space, and they want to build this dream together with us. So we're blessed that we have the infrastructure, the most important part. And then the next part is just, starting to build these programs and create sustainable ways of making revenue out of the space. And I think we can do that. Again, you've got the capital in terms of the human asset and the talent. Why not nurture that and harness it and make that your product and make an industry out of that, the thing that makes its own money, that doesn't rely on the next funding, and I think a standalone institution that can do that is a thing that I dream of. I have a dream. But I also see what that could do for the town itself, right? Because Mchinji is the border town between Malawi and Zambia. It borders Chipata in Zambia. We do our shopping in Zambia for groceries. So it's like, even on an arts mobility level, it's such a lucrative space to build something like that, because can you imagine what it would do for that town? It's the employment, it's trade opportunity within that from all these infrastructures that we're trying to build. So yeah, ambitiously, a smart city could come out of the thing that we're doing, you know what I mean? So I see the possibilities, and as I'm saying, they're beyond me. I'm in my late 30s now, and it's like, yeah, I know it's not a thing that will happen even before I kick the bucket. But it's a thing that can happen. The possibilities are definitely there. And it's needed. It's needed. We need to start looking at new forms of building our economies and our communities and our societies. And why not I've done crazier things, right? So what's one more? Yeah.
And if you look at the industry or just music in general from a developmental perspective, like, what are you excited about what's happening right
Sorry,
now?
no, could repeat that question.
What are you excited about what's happening in music currently?
Ooh, well, yeah, okay. So there's been this movement now, because I really thought in creative education, I thought I was like the innovator of some of these things, right? And so when this started happening, these thoughts started coming to me in 2019. I was like, yeah, no, this is going to be the first African, you know what I mean? Then COVID hit, and suddenly sort of all the funding kind of directed itself towards creative trainings. And so you start seeing pockets of different organizations across the continent starting to do this a lot more. There's that Music Business Academy in Nigeria that I've seen pop up, and a few other notable academies around the continent. And I think that's a very important thing. I think, everyone's starting to look at music as a business. What I do think, because again, it does feel like it's not a coincidence that sort of most of the funding globally directed itself towards that, and all these institutions popped up. I do have a problem with sometimes those kinds of responses, right? Responding to what the funder is telling you to respond to, rather than responding to the needs of your community. So I just feel, and I hope that all these institutions are not prioritizing the money, right? That they're actually looking at each other, and they should look to each other to say, how can we coordinate ourselves to create something that it's not just a 3-week training in music business and here's your certificate of participation, and then a month later this artist still is not monetizing off of their music, so it's like we have to be a lot more coordinated in what we're doing. So I love that, and I'm excited that this movement has started, but I would also advise my fellow peers in this space to start thinking of ways to make it mean something. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. A lot of people forget, and it becomes not effective at all.
Yeah. Take the few boxes, send your reports and your statistics. Yeah,
exactly.
But yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And what do you think of like a conference like this and the role it can play?
These are always important. I tell even the artists back home, for me, I was fortunate, again, working with MTN Bushfire. It is quite an esteemed festival on the continent. So we were always invited to things like this. There's the Music in Bizo in Durban. There's Sakifo in the Reunion Island, Access, a few of them around Botswana International Music Conference. And so you go to these things and it's the same faces. I was on a panel yesterday with Paolo, who was like, it's Paolo, I'm on a panel with Paolo all the time, kind of thing. Even when Matt had called me to invite me to this, it was supposed to be Yusuf from Sauti za Busara, who was on the panel with us as well. But unfortunately, he was unable to make it. But Matt was name dropping who's going to be on the panel. I was like, it's the same guys, and so I like to I think artists don't really see this side of the music business. That there is a network of about 15 people who all know each other, and they're responsible for all the bookings and all the signings and all the recommendations and who's going to be the next big thing. And I always tell the artist friends of mine that, you need to get on these platforms. You need to get to know these people. They're the most important people, out there for networking, but also for finding synergies with other people within the industry where you can do this together. Again, it will not work if we're doing these as individuals, right? This has to be something that we do as a team. JMI has been the biggest or most important one that I've gotten to sit on a panel for, because I didn't know much about JMI, right? I work with Music Crossroads Malawi Band. I see your logos and all of that, but I had never really looked into it up until this one. I was like, who are these guys? And I look it up. I was like, whoa, okay, it's the biggest platform. What? It's the 78th annual one? I don't know a 78th anything. So it's a privilege to be here. I'm very glad. Matt said to me when he found me, he was looking for an African festival manager, and he had to use a chat GPT on LinkedIn to find me, and I was like,
sounds like mad. Sounds like mad.
Yeah, so it's been great to have gotten here on my own credibility, not as Bushfire or as anybody, as Lake of Stars or anything else. To be called here as Tammy has been fantastic. Encouraging. It's like, oh, good, we're doing the right thing. Nice. Yeah.
If people want to connect with you, or if people are thinking like, hey, wait, I want to just talk to someone and then they tell me to come on the radio, or I want to be in a studio and make a hit record without planning it, please teach me how. No, I'm just kidding. But if you want to connect with you or want to find out more about what you do or your platform, where can they find you?
Right. So the Festival Institute, you can look for us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, but don't inbox me on Instagram. I barely use that. When I joined Instagram, my sister said, I'll give you 2 weeks. She was right. But yeah, on Facebook, you can find us quite easily. We're an inbox away. Email address thefestivalinstitute@gmail.com. Very easy, very straightforward. We are practical in what we do. My personal handle, Tammy Claire Mbendera on Facebook, Tammy Claire on Twitter, Claire without an I, CLARE, Tammy, TAMMY. And yeah, I'm sure, I don't know where you post your podcast. I think I'll also share you sort of my links to my pages, but yeah, definitely just an inbox away. And like I said, we've got this beautiful space in Jinji, Malawi, lots of trees. We're big on planting trees. Accommodation, great accommodation. We've housed, like I said, a couple of ethno camps there already. Yeah, so, want to come through and volunteer or, do some recording. There's an artist who lives there as well, Malawi's biggest jazz musician, Eric Baliani. He also incubates himself there. That's where we're all hiding. All the good talent is hiding there. So yeah, like we're always open for people to come and hang out, spend a couple of months. If you're looking to just get a retreat and refresher, they're very big on sort of supporting people through mental health issues. As artists, we tend to go through that quite a lot. I know for myself, the owner of the space has been a friend and colleague of mine for many years. We were together on the board of directors for Lake of Stars. And he's been saying for over 10 years, Tammy, you need to come to Gigi. I'm like, for what? The rural place. I'm not coming there. And actually, my ending up there earlier this year was also because for me, I kind of had a little bit of a meltdown. And I called him in tears, like, I'm ready to take up your offer now. And I went up there and, walked into that space. Whoa, it was beautiful, scenic, fantastic for you to, if you're just looking for some healing, for some way from this crazy, crazy life that we live out here. It's the perfect place to come and just create, meet artists. There's always an artist, a random artist you don't expect who pops in just like, I just need a week here. So yeah, it's the perfect setting to interact and to get to know each other. So yeah, do come through for anything, residencies, just anything. At the moment, we're formalizing different programs as well, which we always publicize on our Facebook page. Facebook, I think, is the most ideal place to reach us and to also see the activities that we're doing. So yeah, please come through. You're invited.
Sounds
with
awesome.
Your little podcast.
I'd love to.
Yeah, please. That would be amazing. It would be amazing. Yeah.
As always, the last question.
Yes.
What is the power of music?
The power of music to heal, to change, to empower. The power is to empower. Music is life. It's life. It preserves. I think for me, it's definitely preserved me. It's held me, kept me strong through many, many things that I don't think I could have made it through. Yeah, music is life, man. Music is life. It's the source. It's the roots. Yeah. The power to connect, not just externally, but internally with your soul. Long live music, man. Yeah, for real.
Amen.
For real. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening. If you want more information about JM or you would like to get involved, visit www.jmi.net. At JMI, we are on a mission to make the world more musical. That's why we created Mubazar, a digital platform that helps us manage all our musical activities across 80 countries worldwide. connecting musicians with opportunities to grow both personally and professionally. If you are a music professional looking for a better way to manage and promote your music activities, check out Mubazar. Created for music organizers, by music organizers, Mubazar allows you to run music competitions, workshops, camps, auditions, masterclasses, awards, events, and much more. Mubazar offers custom application forms, payments for your activities, jury tools, translations, analytics, and more. Mubazar is fast becoming the best place for musicians to find and apply for music opportunities online, and you can sign up today for a free organizer account by going to www.mubazar.com, registering, and then requesting to upgrade to an organizer on the right-hand menu. For more info, don't hesitate to get in touch via support@mubazar.com. It would mean a lot to us if you could give us 1 minute of your time and rate and review the podcast. In case you have any suggestions or would like to be one of our next guests, feel free to reach out to us through the JMI socials.